many years ago, I drew a sweet character, and for some reason he didn't leave my sight, and well, now he's my main OC, and I'll never get rid of him. This is my OC Nikki, and I'll take you from when he looked like this all the way to his current point, which is this, and show you kind of like how he's developed through the years. So hi everyone, I'm Ward and welcome to my channel Wardrawsalot, and this week we will be discussing the evolution of an OC named Nikki. So a couple things before we start. Number one, I've drawn him a lot throughout life, like a lot. I have a lot of doodles that are not in this video because I don't consider them what I feel to be finished drawings of him, which kind of brings it to that, you know, I will only be showing what I considered finished drawings of him and maybe an additional sketch here or there because I feel like that was a part of the evolution that I think, you know, developed his look. On top of that, the reason I am doing this in the first place is because I want to make an official turnaround of, you know, Nikki. And I thought it would be cool to look back through the years and see what I liked and don't like and what's going to be on the official turnaround sheet. This will be the first official era, which is middle school. So that first drawing you just saw was back in 07. This one is in 08. And I'm going to be doing this almost as like a speed round because, well, in 08 I wasn't very creative. So a lot of his drawings very much are the same outfit, same kind of hairstyle, and, well, he's just kind of being developed into something, right? And obviously I was very heavily influenced by the time. I very much liked the scene emo kind of look and kind of that culture, I guess. The main focus here from what I'm gathering of all these drawings is that he definitely had shoulder-length hair, and some of it is in his face, which is something I've definitely carried throughout the years. Thank goodness I got better at creating outfits because these are all atrocious and they will stay atrocious for a while, guys. so enjoy seeing that when you do, because it's not going to get better for a long time. From here, which was the end of 8th grade, we enter the high school era. At this point, my anatomy is still hot garbage, as you can see, because his head is about 10 times the size of the rest of his body. At this point, part of the personality was whenever he would write 2 Ks next to each other for his name, the other one would be backwards. Oh, man. This was also the first instance of him having his cross earring, but I remember forgetting to draw in the cross, so I remember to try and carry that over way later on in life because I forgot throughout the years. I remember this was a very influential drawing of him for the future drawings of Nikki's as well. Here I remember I used a base from a manga, I can't remember which one, but I used that head base and drew Nikki onto it. Now, this one is kind of funny because although I don't think it had much of a lasting impact, this is the first instance where I drew the hair like directly over his kind of nose, and that haircut is very similar to what I actually use for him now. At this point, I think my anatomy is starting to kind of shape along the way. Here he is drawn with his brother, but from his look I can see that I'm constantly switching back and forth between different hairstyles and looks for him, especially because it was influenced by the type of, you know, aesthetics that I like to see. This drawing I actually forgot about until I went deep into the archives, and I actually don't know how much I like it now versus how much I did back then. Mind you, a lot of these drawings are actually a year apart from each other in the high school era. So his look is extremely inconsistent just for the sole fact that I don't draw him often enough, but he's still stationed up in my brain. After this, I took a short drawing break because life sucked, and now we enter the college era of Nikki. Between the last drawing and this one was approximately 2 years, and I remember because it was sophomore year and I was in Calc A, and I was failing the class, so I was just like, I'm gonna draw instead, I don't care. The direct repercussions of being in a major you don't want to be in, so pick the right major for you. That's a lesson from me. The character design here for him I actually really liked, and on top of that, this is actually a sketch, right? So I said earlier that these sketches aren't going to necessarily count except a few, and that's because this sketch was a very defining one for him. Of course, my skills were kind of, you know, still lackluster and rusty at this point because I hadn't drawn very often, except for doodles, but he's starting to develop into the character that I know of. So here we have like the first official Nikki and Ward combo, right? And man, I don't like the way this is drawn. My like style in college really suffered, okay? And it's because I didn't, practice enough, so a lot of my drawings in this era look like straight up doo-doo butt. Now, at this point, I also was transitioning from the other major to a new one because I didn't like that one anymore, and I decided to choose it for myself. So as a result, I was happier, so more drawings would come into play because I like to draw when, I'm happy. At this point, I was trying to practice anatomy, character design, and do things that, make me happy again, and it was starting to reflect slowly because, well, the progression started to kind of ramp up quickly. This Nikki was arguably the most pinnacle important one for his evolution, because this is the point in time where I truly believed this is what he should look like. This is, the best I've ever drawn him at this point, and I still agree with that till this day. At this point, this was him. I wanted this as a base of Nikki for, ever, and I've continued to use this as somewhat of a base since then. I remember I put him in the Persona uniform because I was playing Persona and I just thought he would look cute in it, and I remember being so happy with his face that I tried to mimic it with every single drawing afterwards that I could. So drawings like this would have basically a carbon copy of the face because I would constantly look back and forth to try and make sure that it did look like him. His body's also starting to change at this point because it's slowly becoming more muscular, and, that carried on as a 100% definite throughout the years. The thing that made, designing his character harder was how inconsistent my own style was. So even though we're still in the college era, everything's kind of, going back and forth with how much skill I actually have. And at some point, I even got an iPad and started to do digital art, and that made it even harder because I couldn't translate what I wanted to properly onto the digital field. So at this point, we still have him being, created, this is his first official sheet, but it's still not what I want it to officially be. Now we have the post-college era, which means I get to focus more on my art. Here is another pivotal drawing of Nikki because it's just one that stands out really well to me, especially because at this time I was practicing traditional art very hard, and although it wasn't, very great, it was still a high improvement from what I was just a few months ago. So at this point, it's May of 2019, I'm constantly drawing and trying to get better, but I'm also at this point trying to practice digital art, and on top of that, there's an @ whenever I sign now, which means I've officially started posting my art online. And man, posting all this ugly art online was low-key crazy. I didn't like how a lot of my digital art looked, and I constantly was battling myself about how awful it was, and I tried practicing it more and more, and of course, at some point you practice enough, you're gonna get something you really like, which is this drawing of Nikki right here. I remember being super proud of this drawing of Nikki because this was the first time digitally that I feel like I really got the way he looked, and it was great, and I had finally gained some confidence in myself in my digital art, even though, let's be real, anatomically was still very off. It took me a very long time to understand and wrap my head around anatomy. Every time I feel like I'm doing good with him, I always end up tanking it somehow, and it's usually when I decide to take a 1.5 year break, like an idiot, in between drawing him. So at this point, drew him traditionally, and it was doo-doo, so I was like, let's go back to digital and try and make a little introduction page for him, especially because at this time, I wanted to make that webtoon / manga, which I don't know if you guys have seen the video on, but it's a little embarrassing, so there's that. But at this point, I was like, wow, I really like the way he looks, but sadly, that never stays consistent in my life. Now we officially enter the YouTube era. This was the first official drawing of Nikki I did on YouTube, and it was from an Ohuhu sketchbook review, and I remember just actually loving the way it looks because his face looks so sweet. And from here on, I told myself it's okay to draw him in videos, and that, I shouldn't be almost embarrassed to do it, because for some reason I had this embarrassing feeling of drawing OCs into videos, but it wasn't until I realized that actually a lot of people do it, and it's fine that, I should enjoy drawing him often. Now, throughout these phases, I'm very, I guess you could say, bouncy with my style, right? I go back and forth and I try new things, and he's always at the forefront because he's a character I'm comfortable with drawing. So I'm not afraid to try new styles with him or new ways of coloring, and on top of all of that, I just feel like he's a malleable character. I made him to where I can play around with his look and how, you know, the anatomy is or how the style is, and kind of go on from there. But you have the same kind of general base of everything with his hair and his body and kind of like the way he looks. At this point as well, I decided to change my username to Wardrawsalot because, well, that's just what I felt suited myself better. This was the first ever real Nikki sheet where I tried to make sense of what I liked about his face or his looks and kind of use that as a base from there. This sheet is now obsolete because I'm gonna make a new one, and hopefully this time it won't have a uniboob. At this point, I'm trying to draw him more often because, well, I want to remember the little details that I keep doing about him that make him his character. Sometimes I get it right, and sometimes I get it wrong, which is weird because how can you get your own OC wrong? But you can if you forget it long enough and you don't remember these little details about them. But even though they look so different from each other, they still look relatively the same, and that's because his base stays the same throughout a lot of it. The one drawing, though, that made me want to continuously make him like that over and over again was this one right here, the one with him in armor. His face here looked absolutely perfect, and I still look at it and feel the same way till today. Everything is right about it. The length of the face, it's not too wide, it's not too anything, it's just beautiful. So from there on, I decided I have to try and stick with that face because that's the face that I want him to officially have. So from this drawing, I decided to try and keep those features and remember them as best as I could, like the long slender face, the full lips or pouty lips, the way his eyes were I guess you could say more on the sultry than the big side, and you can tell here when I stray away from that, I end up not liking the drawing as much as I want to. But I still use drawings like this as a learning experience to know that these are the things I don't like, which are making his eyes too big, his face too fat, or his hair too massive. At this point, I'm using more muscle into his body. I also decided to drop the cross earring officially at this point and just keep it with a heart kind of earring. I just thought it would, be better for the character, and also I don't know if it's offensive to people to have a cross earring when they're not of the religion, so I decided to just do what I want, which is add a heart earring, which I liked better anyway, so I guess there's an evolution in that to a degree. Throughout these drawings, this is the one in the most recent point where I was yeah, I want to make him as beefed up as possible, and these are a lot of these videos within the YouTube repertoire, right? So you can go back and look at how these are drawn. This one was a sketch, and I kind of colored it in, and I really liked the way it looked, and I decided to count it towards the official, I guess, lookbook for him because his face was gorgeous here, and I really wanted to try and replicate that. We do lose it back and forth because my style is very, ever changing, and I did make his face too wide here. Although I love his face, I adore it to death, but it's not what I want it to be, so I have to make sure to keep that in mind. Instances like this where I'm using a reference to draw off of, and he kind of changes with that reference, but again, still has the same type of look. A lot of these are just going to end up being, what he looks like, but to the best of my capability. Here, I really liked his body. I like the form and his expression, and overall I feel like it's a very well done drawing of him, and I feel like it captures him well, but there's still something off about it, and I can't tell you what it could possibly be, but I feel like there's something that makes him not as Nikki as usual here. It's probably really just the expression because I never draw him angry because, he's a sweetie pie, so maybe that's what's throwing me off. This drawing is from a recent spread, and I actually learned something from this, is that I don't want to make him too wide. He looks like a little too big here, like bodybuilder status, and, I just want like a little less than than that. So that's a definite lesson learned there. Then we have this current sketch that is still sitting in my sketchbook now, and what kind of started this video because I told myself, wow, you know, he looks really good here and I kind of want to use this as an official design forever. And I thought, why not take a look back at everything and see how he's grown. So I finished the drawing, and from here I wanted to take this look and hopefully make a character turn around, just because I'm getting the itch to start animating, and he's definitely a character that I want to use in those animations. And honestly, I love the evolution from where he was to where he is now, and how he's grown with me through the years. For the many of you that have watched many a video of him, I'm glad you were there to see his evolution too. So long as I can draw, he'll continue to evolve, and I hope you'll continue to see that. So yeah, thanks for watching, and remember I love you. Bye!